Uh,
We don't have Mike with us right now, but we have someone better. No offense, Mike, but we have County Executive Ed Day for his weekly and/or monthly spot on AM Rockland's News. Ed, thanks for joining us once again on Rockland's News today.
and I appreciate Mike giving me some room today. Thank you very much, Mike.
Yes, he abdicated without any issue whatsoever. So happy to have you on. Got a
Good to
bunch of
be here.
topics. I see a bunch of topics on the docket. One is, I mean, I noticed that over the last several days, there was this, I guess, a surprise bill that showed up in Rockland County Legislature. And we've covered it, both ends of it, just basically a bill that seems to either moderate, reduce, or eliminate cooperation with immigrations and customs enforcement, otherwise colloquially known as ICE. Any updates on that? I know that there is a meeting tonight over at Rockland County Legislature about it.
Yeah, the meeting tonight is a typical legislative meeting. Their agenda is to basically set a date for a public hearing about this particular law, which we none of us have seen yet. This is still going around and around as verbiage without any substance at all to it. But they're basically looking at the law from 2018 in Westchester County and mirroring that law. So we have a sense of what's going on. But you know something, it troubles me because the bottom line is that when you have a responsibility, if you're going to put legislation ahead, put it forward. You need a responsibility to the people who you serve to make sure it's being done properly and appropriately. This Beth Davidson, legislator, who I happen to get along with, she's actually heads up one of my boards, which is great.
All right.
She's embarrassed herself with this, um, without any interaction with any law enforcement agency. This was floated Thursday night, I guess it was, or initially
Yeah,
Thursday,
and
Thursday night.
it broke
At the,
on
la- at
Thursday
the
night. Yeah.
at the last minute, what we call a red dot item, which is an emergency item. There is no emergency here. There was no conversation with any of the legislators in the minority. There was no conversation with anybody in law enforcement, yours truly included. I do have some years of experience in what this is all about.
Mhm.
25 years worth, finally, and it was floated out there as a basically we're going to move this forward. This is not the way to do things. And I look at it in its simplest terms as a solution looking for a problem. Last time I looked, we haven't had any problems here in Rockland County as it relates to ICE or anything else for that matter. I would suggest to the sponsors that before you put things forward, talk to people. Don't just think you know the answers because, frankly, if they're reading this crap that I've seen here, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not going to get into what it is because their responsibility now is to put something forward that will stand the test of time. The way that what I've seen so far, they're not going to come close, and we're not going to give anybody, false coverage over something. We're going to call the shots as they are, but we're going to be aggressive in stopping this. We're not going to have. We're going down a bad road here. We're going down a road of becoming a sanctuary county. I don't care what you hear. There is no other option right now besides that because the things that are being minimized by our sponsors is exactly that, preventing us from having conversations, preventing law enforcement from continuing what they've been doing for a long, long time. And that's we were the third safest county in the state in the nation. That's not an accident, and that didn't happen because of Beth Davidson. It happened because of the cops out there in the street doing their job. And it would be good. The last time I read about law enforcement being told what to do, we ended up getting a number of save the with was what the hell was the raise the age. That was the most
Okay,
that
raising
was the
the
most
age of. Okay, gotcha.
ridiculous. And what they if they had talked to anybody in law enforcement, they would have told them what was going to happen. What basically happened is this was put forth with the alleged best of intentions, and we ended up having more kids in the street with guns, committing crimes, getting shot and killed. And you know something, their blood is on those legislators' hands. we had a perfectly workable situation with juvenile offenders and how they're presented and how they're handled in the criminal justice system. It could have been tweaked a bit at the very least, but it worked. And I'm working because I was in part of it at the time. I worked the streets of the city in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, and we were able to do this fine. But if a young man or woman was arrested, depending on what the crime was, it was well thought out. It made sense, and we made sure we try to not make it even worse for our young people. That we have, if we have a young person who's salvageable, we want to get to that person right. What these politicians did was basically started a crazy time where the adult criminals were giving handguns and such to the 13 and 14-year-olds. You know why? They were not gonna go to jail. They were not gonna get arrested. They'll be
Gotcha.
dismissed easily. And this is
Gotcha.
what, I love when you have these folks who purport to know what's going on. And the bottom line is this: I'm a kid from Brooklyn. I know what's going on. I work the streets of Harlem. I work the streets of Washington Heights. I know what's going on. To have someone who spent not one moment in time in a uniform to tell us in law enforcement what to do is shameful. Absolutely shameful. And yes, if you hear my voice getting a little stronger, it is because it angers me.
Well, you walk the streets. I mean, you're a former NYPD commander, right? And you saw firsthand, and I find there's that glass castle effect that happens sometimes where there's a level of trust becomes it gets pervaded into the mindset where it's like, oh, well, if we do this, then there's not going to be any fraud. We're going to trust everybody. And unfortunately, that's, reality wise, we see. I mean, a good example of that would be over the years the Medicare fraud that has happened for
Right.
decades. And of course, nobody want I don't think any lawmaker wants fraud to happen, but it seems like the loosening up of those standards seems to create more fraud
It
and
it
more
it
crime.
absolutely does. You take your foot off the gas pedal, that's exactly what you're gonna have, and it boggles my mind for folks to not to understand the mentality of people who are just there for thievery.
Mhm.
It's not very difficult. If there's money there, or there's a chance for power there, they're gonna take it if they can. And you should have safeguards built in to make sure that make sure, but to that your best way possible to ensure that that doesn't happen. But I mean, you look at Kathy Hochul, our governor, with $2.1 billion worth of Medicaid funding. What it was Medicaid funding that got lost. It was turned up that according to the state controller, that money was sent to people outside of the state.
Right,
And
right.
where's that accountability? Where is the accountability? And it's the governor who wants to run for office this year. I
Mhm.
think Kathy, you should start thinking about another job. I really do.
Yeah. Now, Immigrations and Custom Enforcement has already operated within Rockland in select cases and incidents. They're not a huge presence, from what I understand. I mean, there aren't any widespread reports of anything that has caused major undue, let's just say, upheavals.
Right.
Um, is there, I mean, from your perspective as a, former law enforcement and current county executive, are there processes in place already, minus the legislation? Are there already processes in place to provide the right amount of um, cooperation when necessary? And I'm talking about criminals. I'm not talking about, like, your typical, like, are those processes in place, or are those things that are looked at from time to time?
Well, what I would say is this: we should have the sheriff on for a separate piece of that. But
Mhm.
I can tell you as a matter of fact, the bottom line is that it's a rare scenario here that we have a situation. We are not notified when it happens, and we have no reason to believe it happens anymore than normal course of events during the day.
Right.
Um, and really, that's the simplest terms I can make it. If I said from the outset, I said, are we a solution looking for a problem? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. These folks have no idea what goes on to get to where we are to keep this county as safe as it been. So I would presume that the sponsors of this bill would stop the nonsense, stop the pandering, and go and sit down and talk with law enforcement and find out exactly what is going on and exactly how well we're doing without this intrusion of ignorance. That's what we got here, an
Yeah.
intrusion of ignorance.
And for
They
those
don't
of
know
you
what
that
they're
are
talking about.
listening on Rockland's News, I should also note that we have a new partner in a podcasting colleague known as Brian Heyman up in Tompkins Cove, New York.
Yep.
He actually sat down with Sheriff Lou Falco. We are going to add this to our story, but there's a very comprehensive interview with Sheriff Lou Falco, and I do encourage you to listen to it. It'll be available on the story. And I believe, Ed, you and Sheriff Falco, you have worked together for, I mean, is it a decade or,
Oh, over a
I don't want to,
decade, yeah.
yeah,
And you know something? I think one thing I don't want to see get lost in the conversation is
right,
when there's an orderly process in place, which we have here, there's less chances of having street fights and brawls that you've been seeing in Minneapolis. There's a reason why what's happening in Minnesota has been happening, and it's not been happening here. And what's happening in Minnesota is we have a bunch of feckless politicians failing to control what's going on, basically sending signals out that it's okay to riot. That is not the way this is done here in Rockland. We had
right.
this once before. We made it very clear that if your position is you're going to come here to have a problem, you're gonna run into law enforcement. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, they'll do what they have to do to protect this county.
Yeah. And it
Um,
seems like we've already tried it the other way. I mean, we've seen what's
yes,
happened over the years. So it seems that that method has been tried.
right.
Okay. It's been tried, it's tested. Seems like it didn't work. So, let's do the other thing.
The choice you have right now is that would you rather have a situation where people who have to face a court of law hand themselves in, do it in a rational, calm manner. That instead, what we're getting from our politicians is they want to have fights every day. Every day, it's one more thing that a governor or mayor wants to do. The
Hmm.
president of the United States just recently, a couple of days ago, said that he is not going to be sending any ICE personnel into its municipality unless requested, and they're
Hmm.
going to be absolutely focusing on what the original mission was, which is to go after criminals who are either wanted or who are already convicted of crimes. That was a condition the president brought up on his own. The answers we got back, the mayor from Minneapolis acted like an ass, no other way of putting it, basically saying, "Well, I don't believe him anyway, and it's not going to change anything." Then we have our own governor who turns around, has the utter audacity to turn around and say, "You know something? You're not going to interact with ICE." This is just reported a couple of days ago. She opened this up. What does that mean? Does that mean if one of our ICE officers who's a member of law enforcement has a situation with one of our local cops that they're barred from helping each other? That
Okay.
is
This
horrible.
actually makes more sense as we're talking. So Governor Hochul was the one that essentially started the, let's just say the news cycle on this,
Exactly.
and then, if I'm reading that correctly, there was a bit of a scramble to go and look for a some legislation that mirrored what was what the objective was, and that's where the Westchester bill came into play from 2018.
Right. The governor is falling very short here. I don't think
Mhm.
she understands the mentality of a police officer. A cop is going to put his or her life on the line for a fellow cop. Period. And even a retired cop like myself would never walk away if a fellow officer was in harm's way. She has the utter audacity to turn around and say, "Well, if there's a situation out there that that one officer wants to help another, he or she can't do that because it's violating my law." Well, you know something, Governor? Try it again. If you think our cops are going to just turn around and take a beating because you say it's okay to do that you're going to assault officers, that you don't have to stand up for each other, that's not going to happen. Not here.
Mhm. Got it. Well, that's a good 360 view of how this came to pass. This is obviously a story that's going to play out for the next few weeks.
Yep.
I certainly objectively, and what I've basically talked to our reporters about at Rockland News, our small team is if there's anything that comes out and there was a press conference, Democrats, Republicans, all that fun stuff within an hour of each other, but we're our aim at Rockland News is essentially to report both sides and just to try to get the full fleshed out story so that people can understand what's really going on. We also had another topic that I wanted to broach, and one of the things that we decided to do over at Rockland's News this year is pivot from last year's major focus, which was residential and commercial housing. There was a deficit of approximately, by some estimates, bless you, about 7,600 housing units that were in need. It seems like that's starting to be addressed, especially with the Chair Factory and several other locations across Rockland County. We're pivoting into traffic next. Um, so the Clarkstown recently got $1.8 million for looking into traffic studies. Um, there's some comical videos online about noticing that certain areas of Rockland, people are just driving like insane maniacs.
Tom,
From your
Tom,
perspective, yeah, go ahead.
I don't have the time to go through this, and also Tina and the bus patrol.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I was going to lead up to is the
Oh,
bus
okay,
patrol.
well, it didn't sound like it. It sounded like we're to go into a whole another
Oh,
ballgame.
no, 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 no.
Okay,
You
gotcha.
know, the bus patrol. So,
Gotcha, perfect.
from your perspective, the bus patrol program, which we want to get the idea of, like, is it a viable program? So from your perspective, and your administration put that bus patrol program in, what's your take on the viability of that program and people that that end up having to go through the system on that?
Well, basically, the system is viable. It works. When you take a step back, and I've talked to a lot of people who thought they didn't pass the school bus. Then I have them make sure you go back, look at the photos, look at the video. That link is that's what the summons that you get, and they suddenly realize, yeah, I guess I did it. Look, at the end of the day, this is something that I have been fighting for since I was a civic association president many years ago, and only to be blunted by the fact that we did not have the technology to do this. We have it now, and the results have been staggering. First of all, the funding is solely from violators. Not one penny of taxpayer dollars is needed for this. When this is not a money making machine, every citation that appears to be a break of the law is reviewed by the sheriff and the sheriff's office to make sure it's not an anomaly, and it works. But see, here's the compelling situation. We look at 40,000 violations, almost 31% decrease in citations. The
Hmm.
start of the end of 2024 to 25. That means with 30% fewer people, and you know why? It's a deterrence. That's exactly what we want. You may remember when we first started this program, I said we don't want one penny of your money. We want you to make sure you don't pass the school bus, and bus patrol in their program has to take a risk on that with funding and stuff like that, because we're not using taxpayer money for this. But here's a compelling number: over 90% of the violators who did receive a citation, um, did not receive a second one. And what that tells us very simply from looking at basic data is that once you do it once, you ain't doing it a second time. And I
Right,
think that really shows you that yes, we can do this. But you know something, there's a sidebar to this, which frankly is beyond me to understand. We
right.
had a supposed, and I use that word nicely, a supposed journalist who actually, well, she says she never did it, but she can say it all she wants. She went by and she risked a child's life by going by a school bus. Now she
Hmm.
can say she didn't do it. We cannot release, as of right now, we cannot release that video, because under the law we can't do that.
Hmm.
But she absolutely did it. We saw it with our own two eyes. We challenged her because she went out on a crusade to kill the program because she got a summons. I mean, think about that for a second. Look, if you get a ticket, you go to court, plead not guilty or plead guilty. Very simple. Or you just pay the fine. This is
Right.
this is a non-point violation. Is not a point on here. It's purely a violation under a civil law. And but how to turn around and try to make this program what it's not is disgusting. It really is. So again, I'm going to tell. This is Tina Traster from Rockland County Business Journal. I have no problem saying that publicly because I saw it. We others have seen it in my administration. So we are basically saying she's lying. She did in fact pass the school bus. It was not even a question that she did it. And we are challenging her to release the video. If you're going to sit there and say there and hide under a technicality that we can't put this thing out there and so people can make an honest opinion, and you're turning around making excuses, and saying you didn't do something you did, I'm calling you out, and my administration will support it because we've seen it. So Tina Trasta, grow up, stop doing something that could be potentially injurious to a child. The program works. Either pay your 250, plead not guilty, one of the two, but you should not be running this program down at the risk of children. Shame on you. Shame on you, Tina Trasta.
Gotcha. Okay. And, obviously going back to the point of the point of the program is to protect children from harm. If I can ask this, as far as typically the safety arm that comes out from the buses, once the safety arm is fully out and it's in the position that clearly indicates to people do not pass the school bus,
Right.
what's the amount of time that the driver is still given to process that information? Is it 5 seconds or 3 seconds?
Okay.
Is
What
there?
I find is, well, first of all, it's important to know that once the red lights are on by law,
Mhm.
you're supposed to stop the moment the red lights turn on. Just remember up until now, there was no school buses without stop signs. Now there are, and it just
Mhm.
makes it more obvious to a person driving that they got to stop. This is not rocket science, you know.
Okay. So the red
Um,
lights go on first and then the safety arm comes out.
yes, exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So the red lights go on first. The yellow lights go on.
Mhm.
That says slow down. Anybody who looks up the VTL, you slow when you say that. It's you are supposed to slow down. Be prepared to stop. When the
Mhm.
red lights are on, you have to already have stopped.
Mhm.
Um, they flash for like 5 or 6 seconds. It's not the only way you miss is if you're not paying attention. Or you just don't give a damn. One or the
Yeah,
other.
and that's what I'm getting at is essentially, there's even a warning before the arm comes out. So there's
Yeah,
a clear. I believe me. I mean, I've been rushing to an appointment, and I may grumble, but I'm gonna stop. I'm
yeah.
just gonna stop. I mean, there's a prioritization. It's my time is not worth more than the safety of a child's bottom line. It seems. I don't know.
Your time is not relative. You're absolutely right. Your time, my time, is not worth the chance of killing a child. I call this as I was years ago when we first tried to get this to happen. If you hit that child and kill that child, you're a child murderer. Now, it was at that time that language was shocking. What's true? If you're risking a child's life, if you hit a kid and the kid dies, you're a child murderer. So,
Mhm.
with that as a backdrop, what more can I say? Very simply, that you respect the fact that a school bus with our most precious children are in that school bus. Stop the damn bus. Stop when the bus stops. Stop
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
give it. You're going to lose 30 seconds, whatever. Big deal. Let it go.
Yeah.
But
And just closing it up, that's one of the reasons why. And I know I was a little long-winded before, but really
that's
just the
okay.
focus on traffic safety is going to be a big thing for us this year. So we'll aim to report objectively on that.
Perfect.
Um, and yeah, so and I'm sure you have a very busy calendar. Anything else you wanted to bring up before we hopped off?
It's been a busy day, and I'm glad we got to catch up today and get this very important information out there. And I always appreciate the fact that you're on top of stuff, Tom. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, County Executive Ed Day, thank you for joining us on AM Rockland's News today. We appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to having you on once again.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, great. Just going to go through our sponsors real quick. Thank you to those that have sponsored and supported Rockland's News over the last several years, and especially the last 8 months since WRCR closed up shop. And we're the only game in town for live streaming, and we're going to aim to give you the right facts and the right information. This podcast is sponsored by Yabu Fence Company, Dana Pest Control, Easy Temp in Hackensack, New Jersey for all your ice machine repairs. That's commercial refrigeration, that type of ice machine repair. Kobe Sushi with their jazz music lounge, music on Wednesdays and Saturday nights. And the New York Boulders, our new sponsor for 2026. Thanks for joining us on Rockland News, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.